There we go. So web 42, welcome to objects. We're going to talk all about objects today. So objects are another fundamental building block of JavaScript. You will hear the phrase, everything in JavaScript is an object, and that is true. So objects allow us to group together key value pairs. Where have we seen key value pairs before? I'm thinking not in JavaScript, but in another language that we were working with. Where have we seen key value pairs before? Yes, in CSS. Exactly. Order does not matter. And objects are used for collections of data. Okay, let's see the anatomy of an object. So I'm going to say const dog. Okay, looks like a variable, and I'm going to set it equal to a set of curly brackets. At the top of our object, we write our key value pairs. So my dog has a name, Ada. My dog has a breed. She's a Bolly dog. My dog has an age, so she is 3. She has a color. She is brindle. And she has a favorite food, and her favorite food is salmon. Okay. After we're finished writing our key value pairs, we can write our methods. So our methods are functions that belong to our object. Okay. Notice that each key value pair is separated with a comma. In JavaScript, a semicolon means this line of code is finished. Okay, I'm finished writing, the instruction is done. A comma means and another thing, and another thing, and another thing. So we're listing key value pairs here. We're separating those with commas. Okay. I'm going to give Ada the ability to eat. It's one of her favorite things to do. And on the right side of the key eat, I am setting it to a function. And I'm going to return. This is the string template literal. So $ curly brackets, because we're referencing a piece of data. This dot name likes to eat $ curly brackets, this dot food. We're going to talk about the this keyword in a minute. Okay. I'm going to console.log dog down here and show you what we get back in the console. Save, run. And I get an object. Its name is Ada. Its breed is Bolly dog. Its age is 3. Its color is brindle. Its favorite food is salmon. Okay. If I wanted to make Ada eat, I could say Ada.eat, and I need these parentheses because I want to invoke the function. So save, run. And I get back, Ada likes to eat this dot fave food. That's why fave food. Ada likes to eat salmon. Okay. If I do dog.eat, I'm going to get a function returned to me. Okay, so here I am referencing the function. I'm not invoking it. You need those parentheses in order to invoke the function. Okay, if the data on the left-hand side is a little bit messy, so if we have, for example, spaces in our data, if these are strings, we can't use dot notation to access our data. So this is called dot notation. What would we have to use to access our data if our keys were strings? So if our keys are strings, how do we access them? Yeah, brackets. So we would use bracket notation. Okay, both of these ways of accessing data are valid. So we can use dot notation or we can use bracket notation. Bracket notation looks like this. So we can console.log dog name. Clear, save, run. And we get Ada likes to eat salmon up here. And we just get Ada down here. So both of these are valid ways to access data. Your sprint challenge may or may not have some messy data on the left-hand side. Your keys may or may not have strings. So we might need to use bracket notation. We might want to remember this. Okay. Let's talk for a moment about the this keyword. So we're going to do a deep dive on the this keyword next week, Wednesday, but there's a couple of things about the this keyword that I want you to know today. We're going to talk about two principles of this. The first principle is called window binding. First principle of this. Okay, if I say to you in English, look at this. What does this mean in English? I'm saying to you, look at this. What is this? Tell me what I'm telling you to look at. What is this? Yeah, who knows? I have to be specific, right? I've got to give this some context. So I could pick up my coffee cup and point to it and say, look at this. And then you know that this refers to my coffee cup. But unless I give this some context, it really has no meaning. It's the same thing in JavaScript. Unless we give this some context, it has no meaning. So I'm going to inspect here. I'm going to go into my console. I'll clear the console. And I'm going to console.log this. Okay. I didn't tell this what it should be, so it returns the entire window to me. And it says, I don't know what this is, but maybe it's one of these things. Okay. This is not something that we try to use. We don't use window binding on purpose. If we don't give this any context, it will return the window or the global object in Node. This is a good error. It means we have to go and give this some context. Okay. The other principle of this that you need to know today is called implicit binding. So implicit binding, we'll say second principle. This So this applies to objects with methods. It happens in 80% of use cases. And what this says is when the function is invoked, look to the left of the dot. That's what this refers to. Okay, so this name and this fave food right now have no meaning. When the function is invoked, I look to the left of the dot, and that's what this refers to. So this name is the dog's name, which is Ada, and this fave food is the dog's fave food, which is salmon. Okay. Makes sense? We don't have to get too deep into the theory of this today. We just need to know that the meaning of this gets assigned when the function is invoked. So when the function is invoked, we look to the left of the dot. That's what this refers to. Okay. All right, let's keep going. All right, let's see what objects inside of an array look like. So I'm going to say const places equals, and I'm going to set this to an array. Let me comment these console logs out up here. Okay, inside the array, I'm going to add some objects, and each object is going to get a city, a country, and a region. So I need some help filling in the data here. So give me your favorite places, city, country, region in one comment. So I will start, we'll say city, Kigali, country, Rwanda, region, East Africa. Okay, and I'm going to copy this a bunch more times so that we have like a whole list of objects inside of this array. 2, 3, 4. We'll do 6, 5, and 6. All right, let's see. Okay, Lagos, Nigeria, say West Africa. Okay, Culiacan. Mexico, and this is North America. Reykjavik, Iceland. Iceland. Say Europe. St. Petersburg. Russia. Europe. Okay, we need one more. Let's do something in like Asia or another region that we haven't talked about yet. So we can say like Bali, Indonesia. Yeah, I guess South Asia. Okay. We've got a list of objects inside of an array. Okay, if I wanted to just log out Reykjavik, how would I do that? So how would I see Reykjavik in the console? So write out my console log for me. So console.log. And how do I see Reykjavik? Okay, Sean's saying places 3. So 0, 1, 2, 3, correct. So places is the name of the array. We're grabbing the third index. And how do I see just the city of Reykjavik? Perfect, dot city. Okay, so save, run. Okay, and that goes back to our quiz from this morning. So we're calling the name of the array. We're grabbing the index, which is the object. There's an object at each index. And then we are dotting into the object to grab the key to get the value. In this case, the key is city. Okay, great. Let's take this a step further. I want to see all of the places in Africa. So I want to create a new array. I'm going to call it Africa, and I want to push all of the country names that are in Africa. So how do you think I would do that? What would be my first step? So after I create my new array, what's my first step here? Africa. Yeah, we could use a for loop for this. So we're going to say for let I equal 0. I is less than places dot length I plus plus. Okay, what's the next thing I need? I need something inside of my for loop. We don't need a for in loop here. We're just going to use a for loop. Yeah, we need an if statement. So we're going to say if places I dot region dot includes Africa, then what do we want to do? Thread going here. Yeah, we want to push it into the new array. So we want to say Africa.push. And what do we want to push? We want to push the country name. So we're going to say places, whoops, I dot country. I'm going to come down here and console.log Africa. And I should have Rwanda and Nigeria. Okay, so very similar to what we were doing yesterday. We're just taking this a step further, and we've got some objects inside of an array. So we're just taking this one step further. Okay, how would I make this reusable? How would I make this a function? Would would I make this a function that could search for any region in any array? Yeah, we can use parameters. So we can say function find region. What parameters is it going to take here? So what would be my 2 parameters? Yeah, an array and a region. And I'm going to say for let I equal 0, I is less than array dot length, because we don't know how long the array that we're going to pass in here is. And then I plus plus. And we could say if array I dot region dot includes, so we want that region, then we could, well, we would need an empty array here first. So let new array equal new array dot push array I dot country. Right? Or just array I if we wanted to see the whole array returned to us. Okay, and then here we're going to return the new array outside of the for loop. Okay, let's try to invoke this and see if we get back the same thing. So we're going to console.log find region. And we are going to pass in an array, so places, and we are going to pass in a region. So first I'll say Africa. And then this should also work for Europe or any other region. And there we go. We get back my array of objects with all of the countries in Africa and my array of objects with all of the countries in Europe. Okay, how are we doing for time? All right, we're about half an hour in. I'm going to stop here. I'll give you a break, a chance to ask some questions in Slido, and we'll keep going with some more examples when we get back. I will see you in 5 minutes. All right, welcome back. Go ahead and open up your attendance quiz for today and give me a thumbs up when it's open. So for those of you who are just joining us, again, go ahead and open up your attendance quiz for today. Give me a thumbs up on the thread in Canvas when it's open. Your code for today is 2782. 2782. I'm going to drop it into the chat right now. Okay, your Canvas or your attendance code for today is 2782. So go ahead and submit that quiz. All right, while you're doing that, I will answer some questions. Can you do an example using bracket notation instead of dot notation? Yeah, let's do it. Okay. So if I wanted to use bracket notation here inside of this function, I'm gonna copy this function. We'll say this is dot notation. And this is bracket notation. Paste the function down here and we'll change it to bracket notation. So instead of saying dot region, we would say bracket region. Dot includes region, array dot push. Yeah, I think that's the only thing we're needing to change there. Clear, save, run. We should still get the same results. Yep, there we go. Okay, so with dot notation and bracket notation, they do the same thing, they're just different syntax. So you would just want to change the dot to brackets that go around the key, and then you have to put the key inside of a string. Okay, so with bracket notation, you are wrapping square brackets around the key you are trying to reference, and you are also putting that key in a string. Does that help, Brian? We can do a couple more as we keep going, but does that help? Okay, perfect. I'm going to save this example so that you have it. All right, let's answer another question. Can you do places 3 city? Yeah, absolutely. You can use bracket notation or dot notation. The only time you have to use bracket notation is if there is a space in the key. Okay, so if we wanted to reference Reykjavik here, we could say console.log places 3 city. Okay, and that should still give us Reykjavik in the console. There it is, right there. The only time we absolutely have to use bracket notation, so I'm gonna copy this again, and I'm just gonna move it down and I'll show you. So if this was like the city, and this was like country name, And this was, well, we can leave this as region. That's fine. We'll just put it in strings. Oops. Okay, comment this out. Okay, so now I have to use bracket notation for either the city or country name. With region, I can still use dot notation if I want to, because it's just one word. But since this is 2 words and it's got a space, now I have to use bracket notation. I have no choice. If I try to like console.log places 3, I can't say dot the city. It doesn't work. I'm going to get an error here. So clear, save, run. And oh, places was twice. Let me comment that out too. Save, clear, run. Okay, unexpected string. So I'm going to get an error here. I can't dot into a string. I need the brackets to wrap around the string to reference the city. Okay, I know what you're probably thinking, like, why would anybody put spaces in the keys inside of their objects? We don't always get to choose what data we work with. And lots of times in JavaScript, you're going to be working with what are called JSON objects. JSON is like a way to transfer data across the internet. And JSON objects have strings as keys, basically. So JSON objects are always in strings. So that's why you need to know both bracket notation and dot notation. Okay. So here we would have to use bracket notation. Your sprint challenge, like you may have to use bracket notation, but otherwise I could still use dot notation for the region. So I could say like console.log places 3 dot region, because it's only one word. I should still be able to get Europe here. Is there a situation where you can't use bracket notation and you must use dot notation? No. So you can probably always use bracket notation, but you can't always use dot notation if there is a space in the key. All right. Should we always use bracket notation in case there are spaces in the keys we don't know about, or would we have access to the keys? You would need to know what the keys are in order to reference them. So if they don't have spaces, like there's no reason to use bracket notation. You can just use dot notation. If they do have spaces, then you would need to use bracket notation. Could you please go over bracket notation versus dot notation? I'm still trying to grasp the difference. So Katerina, do you still need clarification there? No, okay, cool, awesome. Okay, so for the first example, couldn't you use this dot name plus likes to eat plus this favorite food, or is that not recommended? I totally could, but concatenating a string this way is really ugly. So I don't. It's much prettier to use that string template literal, right? Because then I'm not having to worry about spaces. So I totally could have done that. I totally could have said return this dot name plus string, and then I have to remember to put a space here, likes to eat, and then I have to remember to put another space over here, and then I could say plus this dot food, this dot fave food. Right? I could have done it that way. It still would have worked. But this is kind of like an older way to concatenate things. Concatenating a string means like putting a bunch of strings together, okay? This is an older way of doing it. It's still valid, but this here, the string template literal, this is ES6 syntax. So this is what you'll be seeing developers using in the wild now that it's available. Okay. Does that make sense to everyone? Ooh, let me get a thread going here. Okay, perfect. So in the case where the object's keys are in string, would the dot notation work? Yes, if it's only one word. No, if it's two words, right? It's that space that breaks things for us because we can't reference a string without the brackets around it. So it's the space that breaks things. In the case of when strings have a space, would you need the dot notation as well as the bracket notation to work? No. If keys are strings and they have a space, you're using bracket notation. Can you go over implicit binding again? Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so implicit binding is the idea, let's see where are the notes, right here. The idea that when a function is invoked, so when a method, which is a function that belongs to an object, is invoked, we look to the left of the dot, and that is what this refers to. The idea with this is that when we start learning about constructor functions next week, so constructor functions are functions that build other objects, like that is their whole life purpose. When we start learning about those next week, we can actually abstract functions out of methods we can actually abstract methods out of objects and pass them across thousands of objects. So we could technically share this eat function with thousands of other objects, in which case we wouldn't know what this name or this fave food is until that method is invoked. So when the function is invoked, we look to the left of the dot, and that's what this refers to. So the function is being invoked here, dog.eat. We look to the left of the dot, and that tells us that this name is the dog's name and this fave food is the dog's fave food. Any more questions about implicit binding? Any more questions about that? Or it's pretty clear? You guys aren't being tested on this keyword for this sprint challenge. You just kind of need to be aware that this is being assigned when the function is invoked. So we're testing you next sprint challenge on the this keyword, but this sprint challenge, you just need to understand that this name gets assigned when the function is invoked down here. Okay, awesome. How on earth was JavaScript made in only 10 days? I don't know. Someone didn't sleep and had a lot of coffee, I guess. With arrays, you have to use bracket notation when referencing numbered property names. So arrays don't have properties. Arrays only have indexes. And yes, you need to use bracket notation in order to grab an index inside of an array. But an array doesn't have a property. Only objects have properties and values or key value pairs. Arrays are just a list of things where order matters. So we can grab an index of an array. And we need to use square brackets when we are trying to access things inside of an array. Yes. Is there any benefit for using dot notation over bracket notation? Nope, it's the same thing. Personally, I think dot notation looks prettier, but it's the same thing. They do the same thing. In the example, you had places3.thecity. Is this a typo or is the dot needed for this to work? I don't think that there's a dot there, is there? Oh, sorry, that's a typo. Clear, save. run. Places 3, square brackets, the city. Sorry about that. That was a typo. How would you create a new object within a function? So for example, I want to create multiple objects that are similar and don't want to use the object literal method each time I want to create a new one. You're not going to learn that until next Wednesday and Thursday. So we're not going to do constructor functions today. That's a little bit too advanced for today. So I can show you how to create just like a simple object inside of a function, but it's not a template or it's not a constructor function. And we'll get to that in a minute. What would be tomorrow's sprint format? Small tasks like the daily assignments or work on a project like last sprint? So a little bit of both. So tomorrow you'll have a very small website that is already built for you and you'll need to make it responsive. And then you'll have tasks to answer in JavaScript. Okay, just like your assignments. I think there's like 7 or 8 tasks plus making a website, a very small website responsive. I thought the array.length was a property. No, it's a method. So with arrays, we have the ability to use array methods. Can you construct objects on the fly with this method? But there's another method. How do you say template objects? So we're not going to get into constructor functions today. So if you want to build other objects, just like drop that out of your mind for today. We're not getting into constructor functions today. You'll get into constructor functions next week. That's a whole other like day's worth of objectives. So for today, we're not building, we're not constructing other functions or other objects with constructor functions. Okay, let's see a couple more examples. So I want to write a function, and we can do this with the bracket notation if we want to keep working with bracket notation. That's fine. I want to write a function that changes a value of a key. So I want to write a function that changes a region at a specific index. Okay, so I want to change the region at a specific index. So I'm gonna update this here. I'm gonna say Iceland is in South America. Okay, that's obviously wrong. So how would I write a function that would allow me to loop through this array of places, grab Iceland's region, and update it? And I'm going to give you guys, I'm going to let you guys do this as a breakout. So I want you to write a function that loops through places, grabs a region at a specific index and updates it. How much time would you like for this? We will do it together. So if you don't finish it all, that's fine. But how much time? Do you want 6 minutes to work on this as a group before we do it together? Do you want 7 minutes to work on this? 10's a little too much, but I can give you 6 or 7 minutes. 7? Okay, awesome. Let me put you in your breakout rooms. So with your breakout rooms, make sure someone shares their screen. If no one is sharing their screen, you be that person that volunteers to share their screen and then just work through the problem together. So your cameras should be on, you should unmute yourself, you should be talking. This is not a break. This is like a work period so that you guys can ask questions when you get back. Okay, so I've opened up all those rooms. I'm gonna start the timer and I will call you back in 7 minutes. All right, so please make sure you're joining those breakout rooms. If you are not joining those breakout rooms, you'll be marked absent for today. So make sure you're joining those breakout rooms. So Ricardo, Julie, Natalie, Terrence, you should all be in your breakout rooms now. Okay, welcome back. If you're back in the main room, I'm assuming you've solved this. So let me know in the thread how that went for you. Everyone else should be back in about 1 minute. Okay, so if you're back in the main room, I want to see a reply on that thread. Let me pause this. Looks like everyone's coming back right now. Perfect. We've got 1 thumbs down. So what is it that you struggled with? How far did you get? What couldn't you solve? So I want to hear some details on that thread, and we're going to do this together. Okay, so we want to write a function that changes a region at a specific index. So I'm going to say function change region. Okay, and what are the 3 things that I should be giving to my function? So what parameters should I give to my function? What information do I need to supply here? Yeah, an array, an index, and a new region. Exactly. So we can say array, index, and I'm going to say update. Okay, so whatever the updated region is. Okay, how would I do this? So first things first, do I need a for loop? What do you think? Yes or no? Okay, some people are saying yes, some people are saying no. I don't think you need a for loop here. I think that we can grab the array. We can grab the specific index. We can grab that region. And we are going to set it equal to the update. Okay. And then we're just going to return the array. Before I run this, does this code make sense? If not, tell me what doesn't make sense so we can talk about it. So I'm grabbing an array. I'm going to grab a specific index at that array. I'm going to grab the key of region, and I am going to set it equal to whatever the update I provide is. Okay, let's see here. Another case of overcomplication. Yeah, we like to make things more complicated than they need to be, for sure. Why do we need 3 parameters? So we need to be able to grab any array and any index, and then we need to provide the update that we want to change, right? So whatever updated value it is. We could even say, we could even put another parameter here, and we could say key. So we could basically grab any array, any index, any key, and provide an update, right? We'll do that after. We'll do that in a second. We'll keep it a little bit more simple for now. Do you need to return a value? Can't you just do the update? Well, we are inside of a function, right? So we want to return something back after we've run the code inside the function. So we want to see that update. So we're going to return the array and we're going to check to see if that update worked. So let's invoke this function. So we're going to console.log change region. Okay, places 3. Is it 3? I think 0, 1, 2, 3. Yep, 3, and Europe is going to be our update, right? Because Iceland is not in South America. So let's clear, save and run. And we can see that Iceland here has been updated to Europe. Okay. Sure, you want to test your code, but why do it with a return? Well, we're always returning something inside of a function. We always want to get something back from our function. So that's why we're doing a return, okay? If you're writing a function, it's because we want code to be given back to us. So a console log is so that we can like preview our code, but a return is actually giving us something back from the program that we've just run. I know that return and console log are like one of those things that when we're first learning JavaScript, they can get a little bit mixed up. Okay, perfect. You've got it. Awesome. Can you demo with a for loop without taking index as a parameter? Yeah, so do you want to like check to see if the region is something? Because the only way that we would use a for loop, or the only reason why we would use a for loop, is if we needed to check every single thing inside of the array. In this case, we don't need to check anything. We just know that we need to make an update. So we're just grabbing the index and then the key and making our update. So the for loop would be for checking something. So first of all, let's make this function more reusable. We'll do that down here. We'll say function change key. We can say array key index update. Okay, and then we could say array index key equals update. And then we can return our array. So here we can change any key inside of any array, right? So I can say console.log change key, and I'm going to pass it the places array. This time I'm going to pass it a key. So let's say the city. I'm going to pass it an index. So let's say 4, and I'm going to give it an update. So we're going to change St. Petersburg to Moscow. And let's just comment this one out so it's not running in the console. Clear, save, run. And here we have Moscow, Russia. Okay, so that would be an even more reusable function because now we can change any key, any value of any key inside of any array. What if we wanted to update 10 regions at the same time? Do we have to write it over and over? You could loop through the array and update every single region. So you could do it that way. Once you change it in the log, will the array be forever changed? No, because it's only changing when we invoke the function, right? So basically, if I were to come down here in console.log places, it's going to be our original array. So clear, save, run. I'm just going to make this a little bigger so we can see. So here we have our update. Down here, oh, it is changing it. Maybe because it's after this. It is changing it. Yeah, there we go. So it's changing it. So places is now changed. Right now we have Moscow. So it's changing, it's keeping the change in our places array. What if you have hundreds of indexes and you don't know the index number? So for this specific use case, you would need to know the index number. Otherwise, you could check, like you could say, you could write a for loop and you could say like, if it includes Europe, then I want to update it to something else. But you need to know like what you're changing basically before you can make that change. So it depends on the use case. If you wanted to check every region and see if the region equaled Europe, and if it did equal Europe, you wanted to update it, that's when you would need a for loop, because you need to check every region. But the for loop is only working if you need to check something. Does that make sense to everyone? Do you still want to see this with a for loop? Like, do you want to do that where we're checking a region and if it equals something, we're going to update it? Would that be useful? Yeah, okay, let's do it. Trying to think here. So function, let's call this update region. And it's going to take an array. It's going to take, it's not going to take an index. It's going to take an array. It's going to take a region. So the region that we're looking for, and it's going to take an update. Okay. And we need to update here. So we're going to say for let I equal 0, I is less than array dot length I plus plus. We can say if array I region dot includes, this way, region dot includes region, then we would say array I region equals update. Okay, and then we can come down here and we could return the array. Dot includes because this is an array. So that means we have access to an array method, right? So we're checking here now to see if the region includes whatever region we provide here. And if it does, we're going to update it to something else. Okay. Includes is misspelt in, yes, thank you. Includes, thank you. I would have figured that out when I ran the code, but that is good. Okay, so let's invoke this. We're going to console.log update region. We want to pass it places. We want to pass it a region. So let's pass it Africa, and then let's just change it to Africa instead of East and West. So we'll say Africa. Okay, let's see what we get back here. Clear, save, run. And there we go. The region has been updated to Africa. The region has been updated to Africa. So instead of it saying East Africa and West Africa, now it's just Africa. Okay. It was originally East and West. Makes sense. Awesome. Okay, there's one more thing I want to show you today, and then we'll do a review, and then we'll talk about today's project. So we were talking about using a function to create an object. So I want to make this very clear that it's not a constructor function. So not a constructor function, but we are going to use a function to build an object. Okay, so I'm going to call this function create pet. It's going to get a name, a species, and a value of well behaved, which is going to be a Boolean of true or false. Okay, we want to return an object with a name, a species, and a value of well behaved, which is a Boolean of true or false. Okay, we can do it this way. This is like the short, simple, beautiful way. We can also do it this way. So we can say name, name, species, well behaved, well behaved. Okay, but if our parameters have the same name as our keys, we don't have to write them out twice. We can just shorten it and say name, species, well behaved. And it's going to put our value or whatever we pass in here as the value of these keys. Okay, so give me some of your pets here and we'll create them as an object. So red, and I need like their name, their species, and whether or not they're well behaved. So true or false in the same comment. So I'm gonna console.log, I'm gonna invoke the function here, create pet. I have one, Zev. He is an evil cat, and false. He is definitely not well behaved. Okay, let's see what else we have. Console.log. We have Charlie. He is a golden retriever. And true, he's well behaved. We also have Lucy. Oh, we need create pet here. We need to invoke the function. I'm getting ahead of myself. Create pet. We need create pet. Lucy. Lucy is a dragon. And true, well behaved. Nova, perfect. We'll get one more bad pet in here and then we can run it. So console.log, create pet. We've got Nova. Nova is a mutt. And false, Nova is not well behaved. Okay, so let's see now what we get back here. So save, run. And the first time the function's invoked, we get an object, name Zev, species evil cat, well behaved, false. Name Charlie, species golden retriever, well behaved, true. Name Lucy, species dragon, well behaved, true, and name nova species mutt, well behaved, false. Do any of these objects exist outside of the function? So do these exist outside of the function? Oops. No. What if I wanted to reference them outside of the function? So how would I create them? Any ideas? Give me a big thumbs down if you don't know. We're not going to push them into an array. In this case, yeah, Austin's got it. We're going to declare a variable. So I'm going to say const zev equals, and what would I set that variable equal to? I don't want to set it equal to an object. I want the function itself to create the object. So what would I set that variable equal to? What does zev equal? Yeah, the function invocation. So zev equals create pet zev evil cat false. Okay, and now if I want to see zev, I can come down here and console.log zev and I should be able to see my object here because now I've saved that function invocation inside of a variable. So every time I reference zev, it's going and invoking the function of create pet, and it's assigning the values of zev, evil cat, and false. Does that make sense? Amazing. Okay, let's do a quick review of everything we've learned so far, and then we'll talk about today's project and answer some final questions. So review. I'm just going to comment this out. Okay, so making a website responsive, you need two things. So we need a viewport meta tag in the head of our HTML doc. We need media queries. Media queries look like this at media, max dash width, 500 pixels, and then all styles for 500 pixels go here. So all the styles that are changing, for 500 pixels go here. Okay, max dash width is desktop first. It scales down. Min dash width, this is mobile first. It scales up. There's all this talk about like, oh, mobile first development is better and desktop first development is better. Honestly, it doesn't matter whether you build mobile first or desktop first. The goal is that you want your website to look good across all screen sizes. So whether you're building mobile first or desktop first, if your website is fully responsive, it shouldn't matter. Okay, we've been building desktop first. Use scalable units to size all the things. Very important. It's going to save you lots of headaches if you use percentage and rem and occasionally VH. So I can say Britt uses percentage for almost everything. Rem for font sizes, and occasionally VH to set a height on a splash image or empty section with a background image. Okay. I have not ever found a good use case for VW, view width. Percentage is better. Percentage is based off of the parent element. That's a good thing. We want things to be contained by their parents. Okay, and then the next day we jumped into Intro to JavaScript. We talked about variables, var, let, and const. Var can be redeclared. It can be reassigned and it's function scoped. Let can be reassigned. It cannot be redeclared. And it is block scoped. Const can't be reassigned. It can't be redeclared. And it is block scoped as well. Okay, so rule of thumb here. Rule of thumb, use const until you can't, and then use let, but never var. Okay, let me save all these notes so far. I'm saving these so you can go and refresh that original CodePen. Don't feel like you need to speed type to try and keep up, okay? All right, then we jumped into functions. Functions, there were 3 ways to declare a function, and they look like this. So this is a function declaration. So function name, param1, param2, and then we want to return something. So we want to probably return param1 plus param2. Okay, we would invoke the function like this, invoke function name, and we would pass in arg1 and arg2. So our arguments go here. When we invoke the function, arg1 takes the place of param1, so it would go here. And arg2 takes the place of param2, so it would go here. Okay, so when the function runs, it's returning arg1 plus arg2, whatever those arguments are. If we're adding like this, they're probably numbers. All right, save that. So arguments are passed into the function when it is invoked, and they take the place of the parameters when the function runs. Okay. Parameters are just placeholder values. That's all they're doing. They're just holding the place for the arguments that we're going to pass in. Okay, and then we talked about conditionals. So if, else, if, always 2 separate words. and else. We'll talk about each of these. So your condition goes here. Condition goes here. And else doesn't get a condition. So else is saying if nothing else is true, do this. Okay. With if statements or conditionals, if the condition is true, the code will run. Code to run goes here. And else is saying if nothing else is true, run this code. Okay. All right. Then we talked about loops. So I'm going to do the anatomy again of a for loop. So a for loop needs three things. So they are great for iterating over a block of code n number of times. Used in the wild, they're really just used for checking things inside of an array and then doing something with it. Okay, we need an initial value, which is usually I equals 0. We need a condition. This is how many times the loop should run. Okay, usually this is less than I is less than array dot length. And we need an iterator. How much should I increase by every time the loop runs? So here is usually I plus plus. And it looks like this. For let I equals 0. I is less than array dot length. I plus plus. Okay, and then we would write our code inside here. So whether it's an if statement and we're checking something, or every time the loop runs, we want it to do something. Okay, and then finally, you guys learned a lot this week. We got to arrays. And with arrays, order matters. Index starts at 0. And when we have an array, we have access to array methods, which is awesome. And you may need to look up methods on your sprint challenge that we haven't gone over yet. So get used to looking methods up. The split method might be a method you need to look up. So we might want to write that down, the split method. Okay. Awesome. I'm going to stop here. I'm going to save all these notes. I'm going to take some final questions and then we'll talk about today's project. Let me pop on over. Can we use numbers as parameters? You shouldn't. So use a word as a parameter. A number should not be a parameter. You can pass in numbers as arguments, but they shouldn't be parameters. Could you show us how to use a not condition to mutate a key value pair? For example, if Iceland and not Europe. I think that's getting a little bit too advanced for what you need to do today. But let's see if we can write one out quickly. So we could say here, if array I region if array I region, no, if array I, the city, the country name equals Iceland, and array I region is not Europe, then you can do something. I think it's the double equal sign. Let's see here. It's not in JavaScript. It's not equal. Yeah, it's the double equal sign. Okay, so it would look something like that. So if the country name is Iceland and the region is not Europe, then you could change it. Else you would just leave it alone. Does that make sense? Okay, great. When you are returning the create pet function, are you also creating keys? Yeah, we're creating keys inside of the function. So let's take a look at it. So right here, right, we're saying name is going to be set to whatever we provide as the name. Species is going to be set to whatever we provide as the species, and well-behaved, we're going to give this a Boolean of true or false, and it returns this. So it is returning the keys here. We have name Zev, species evil cat, well-behaved false. With a function, are you able to declare all of the keys in an object as variables, or do you have to do each one individually? You would need, so everything you're referencing inside of a function would need to be individual, right? You need to get super specific with JavaScript. So you couldn't just say like any key inside of an object. You would need to pass in as a parameter whatever you're trying to pass in when you're invoking the function. So you can't just assume that JavaScript is going to know anything. You have to be very specific. How do you highlight everything with comments? You just highlight it in CodePen and hit Control ? And it will comment it out for you. Lines 153 and 154. Is this an industry standard or just preferred with Lambda School assignments? Let's see. What are lines 153 and 154? There's nothing on line 153 and 154. What lines do you mean here? Which ones are you talking about? Scalable units, 155 and 156. Let's see. No, you need to use scalable units for everything. Like that is definitely an industry standard. This is what I use. I would say that's probably industry standard as well. Like maybe some people use REMs, but everyone's using scalable units in the industry. If you're using pixels for everything, you've got a problem with accessibility. So you want to use scalable units. Implicit binding, one last time, please. When you look to the left of the dot, there's this. How does that tell us what this is? So write down these notes. Okay, with implicit binding. Where are the notes? Right here. When the function is invoked, look to the left of the dot. That's what this refers to. The function is being invoked here. So look to the left of the dot. This name is the dog's name. This fave food is the dog's favorite food. Why? Because the dog is what is to the left of the dot when the function is invoked. Does that make sense? Okay, awesome. Yeah, I've saved these notes, so you can always go back and reference them if you need to. Is this the last week we will be dealing with CSS or HTML for a while? Yeah, so after this week, you're not going to touch HTML and CSS again until sprint 1 of unit 2. I would probably try to build something on the side so that you don't totally forget those skills. So even if it's like a little mini website or something like that that you want to do over the weekend, just to keep those skills sharp, because you don't touch it again until unit 2, sprint 1. All right, let's talk about today's project. So we are on module 4, objects challenge. So the web module challenge objects. We want to fork this project. We want to clone it down to our machines after we've forked it. Please be super organized here. So if you haven't created a folder, either in your documents or your desktop to keep all of your Lambda School projects, I would highly recommend you doing that. It's going to help keep things organized. So I'm going to CD into my desktop. I'm going to CD into Lambda projects, and I am going to git clone and paste that URL. And then I'm going to git checkout -b, my first name dash my last name, and I'm going to say web42 because I already have a branch with my first and last name. Fatal, not a Git repository. So what does this error mean? What does this error mean? What did I forget to do? Yeah, I didn't CD into the project. So I've got to CD into web module challenge objects. Now I can get checkout -b. So if you ever see fatal, not a Git repository, it means that you didn't CD into the project. Now I'm going to open this up in VS Code. And I didn't do that correctly. So I'm going to say code space period. There we go. And index.js, view, toggle word wrap to keep everything on the same screen. Then I'm going to open up my terminal and I'm going to run npm install . And then I'm going to run npm run test : watch. My tests are running. There's a lot less tests today. That's because you have less functions that you're writing. So only the functions are being tested. I'm going to say that again. Only the functions are being tested. Okay. So down here where it says log only Julius's feedback to the console, no function needed. This is not being tested. Task 4 is not being tested. Task 5 is not being tested. So task 6 and 7 are. Okay, so task 1A is being tested. Task 2 is being tested, and task 6 and 7. So those are your 4 tests today. You still need to complete everything else. It's just you're not going to see the tests change when you do so. Okay, so task 1 is pretty much exactly like that create pet function. Okay. Here with the burger, we're adding a method called discount. So I would take a look at how we added a method inside of our dog object to see how to do that. So that would be really great for syntax reference. Here we are logging just Julius's feedback. So we are going to reference the array and then the index, and then we are going to dot into the feedback to get Julius's feedback. Task 5, we are updating the missing feedback. So I would take a look at, where did we do that? We did that down here, right? We updated some missing feedback. We did it inside of a function, but if we wanted to do it outside of a function, we could just reference like places, 3 region, and we could say equals Europe. Okay, so it doesn't have to be done inside of a function. We could totally do this outside of a function. So that would help you answer task 5. Task 6, write a function to return a review based on the index of the review in the array. So we are going to receive an array and the desired index, and you're just referencing the review at that index and returning it. Okay, so in that case, you would, so for example, if we wanted to reference the country at index 0, we would say places 0, the country, right? And here we are just referencing the country at index 0. So this is what we would be returning. And task 7, use the get last review function to do the following. So you're going to receive an array of objects, which will be your reviews array. So we're just going to write, we're going to pass array here as our parameter because we want to be able to receive any array of objects. And we are going to return the last index. So how do we get the last index inside of an array if we don't know how big the array is? How do we get the last index? So if I didn't know how big my array was going to be, how would I grab the very last index in the array? Array.length minus 1. Exactly. Okay. All right. I feel like you guys have got a good handle on this today. I'm going to check for any final questions. There we go. I'm having trouble using my terminal to console log my solutions on VS Code. I've downloaded the latest update to Node.js. Could you go over how to console log our solution in the VS Code terminal? Absolutely. All right. So first things first, I'm going to console log hello. So I'm just going to console.log hello web 42. The console is working. Okay. Now I'm just going to save. So Command S or Control S will save. And if I scroll here, I see my console log right here. So you might have to scroll around the console a little bit. They're usually above the test suite. And here is where I see my console log. Hello web 42. The console is working. Okay. So if I were to, let's log Julius's feedback together. So I can console.log, and maybe I'll say task 3 so that I can see that it's task 3 in the console. And Julius's feedback is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So he's at the 5th index. So we're going to say reviews 5.feedback. And right here, task 3. I was largely unimpressed by this venue, nothing special on the menu, and it's too expensive. The atmosphere is polarizing and not for me, but I think some would like it. Julius doesn't sound like a very fun person to go out for lunch with. Okay, but we can see his feedback here. If that's not working for you, please take a screenshot of like, this would be the perfect screenshot for me to see if this was working or not. I want to see your console log, and then I also want to see your terminal so that I can see that it's not working, and then we can help you debug from there. All right. Yesterday, I had one test failed syntax error. The debug was sending my code below, do not touch this code, like around the foobar stuff. Why is this? It's because you commented out one of your functions. So if I comment out, so if I come down here and I comment this out and I save, I'm gonna get one failed, one total, okay? And it's gonna send me down here. It's because it's looking for a get review by index function to test. And now that get review by index function doesn't exist because I've commented it out. So you can't comment out entire functions. You can comment out the code inside of your function if you're trying to debug things, but please don't comment out your entire function because then you're just going to get a syntax error. Okay, and whenever you see one test failed, one test total, that does mean like, hey, there's a syntax error. So JavaScript stops running until you fix that error. Okay, awesome. We have 10 minutes left, but I will let you go for lunch early if there's no other questions. Good luck on your sprint challenge tomorrow. Remember that you can reference all of these guided projects, including the one today with all the notes, and you've got this. Okay, have a good afternoon.